This is Terrence, a taxi driver. Right now, he is on his daily routine. On the other side, there is a young woman named Zoe. She was checking her boyfriend's phone when she discovered that he was cheating on her. Heartbroken, she immediately requested a taxi to leave. A little while later, her boyfriend Alex arrived. Zoe confronted him, telling him that she knew he was planning to meet another woman named Alice that very night. She decided to end the relationship. She couldn't continue dating someone who was unfaithful. As Alex pleaded with her not to leave, the taxi she had requested arrived. Zoe got in and left, leaving Alex in shock. It turned out that the taxi she had boarded was Terrence's. Terrence tried to talk to Zoe, but she didn't respond. She was deeply upset. He drove her home, and when they arrived, Zoe got out of the car and walked away. As she was leaving, Terrence suddenly remembered some documents she had left behind in the car. He rushed out to give her, but Zoe, still angry, grabbed them and walked off with them. Terrence wondered, "What's wrong with this lady?" But he just got back into his car and drove off. Not long after, he picked up another passenger. As he checked the back seat, he noticed that Zoe had left some of her documents in the car. Terrence didn't want to return them to her because he already had a new passenger, and by now he had driven far from her place. So he simply tossed them onto the seat and continued with his work. Meanwhile, Zoe cried the entire night. Heartbreak was unbearable. Eventually, she cried herself to sleep. The next morning, she woke up late. She was supposed to attend a meeting at work but had overslept. She rushed to the office, but by the time she got there, she was already late. Later that day, she returned home, looking frustrated. She picked up her phone and called her best friend, Nancy, telling her she had been fired from her job for losing important company documents, the very ones she had left in Terrence's taxi. Nancy comforted her. Zoe then asked, "When are you coming over to my place?" "I'll be there soon. I just have some work to finish first," Nancy replied. Then the call ended. Moments later, there was a knock on the door. Zoe got up to open it. It was Terrence. "I'm the taxi driver who brought you home last night," he said. Zoe immediately noticed her documents in his hands and quickly grabbed them. "You left these in my car," he explained. "And how does that help me now?" "So you had these documents with you all along, and because of you, I lost my job. Why didn't you return them yesterday?" Zoe snapped. "I didn't know they were that important," Terrence replied. Zoe stormed back into her house and slammed the door. Terrence sighed and said, "I'm sorry. You can just call your boss and beg him." Then, feeling dejected, he walked away. The next day, he returned to Zoe's place and knocked on her door again. This time, he wanted to apologize properly, but Zoe wasn't interested. She believed he had intentionally kept her documents. She told him to leave and never come back. Then, she went inside and shut the door. Terrence figured, "Well, I guess I'll just move on with my life." As he was leaving, he crossed paths with Alex, who had just arrived. Alex had come to apologize and ask Zoe to take him back. He knocked on the door, and Zoe came out. Alex tried to make up a story, insisting that he had no relationship with Alice, but Zoe wasn't buying it. "Save those lies for fools," she snapped at him. She kicked him out of her life and told him never to return. Then, she went back inside. Alex had no choice but to leave. A few days later, Nancy visited Zoe. The two friends were happy to see each other. Later, Zoe prepared a meal. She was an excellent cook. Nancy took pictures of the food and posted them online. She started doing this every day, recording and sharing every dish Zoe made. One day, Nancy suggested, "You should take your cooking talent seriously. It could make you a lot of money." "Forget about office jobs," she added. "But how do I start? I haven't even studied culinary arts," Zoe replied. "If you're willing to start training tomorrow, I'll pay for your classes," Nancy offered. Zoe was hesitant. She didn't believe cooking could be her career, even though she loved it. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Terrence was going about his life, but he still thought about Zoe. He wasn't at peace, so he decided to call her. Zoe saw the call and hesitated, wondering what to say. Eventually, she picked up. "What do you want now?" she asked angrily. "I just wanted to check on you," Terrence said gently. "Please don't call this number again," Zoe snapped and hung up. Nancy took Zoe's phone and laughed. "Oh wow, you saved his name as annoying driver. He keeps calling every day and I've told him to leave me alone, but he doesn't get it," Zoe complained. "He probably just feels bad," Nancy said. "Feel bad about what? He ruined everything for me," Zoe fumed. Nancy sighed. But honestly, Terrence didn't cause you to lose your job. You know that, right? Alex did. If Alex hadn't cheated, you wouldn't have been in that situation. Besides, you were the one who forgot your documents in his taxi. He even tried to call you, but you ignored him. If you had answered, you wouldn't have lost your job. Ugh, I'm exhausted. Just leave it alone, Zoe said bitterly. As they talked, Nancy received a message on her phone. She suddenly became excited. Bestie, I just got a job for you. Zoe's mood instantly lifted. She hugged Nancy tightly. But I don't even know what kind of job it is, Zoe said. It's a cooking job, Nancy revealed. Zoe was stunned. My friend was really impressed by your cooking. I sent her all the food pictures I took while I was here. She wants you to cook for 20 of her friends. And guess what? They'll pay 20,000 naira per plate. Zoe was overwhelmed with joy. She quickly did the math and said, I'm doing this. She immediately got up to start preparing. And the next day, Zoe cooked. They packed the food and made the delivery. After returning home, Zoe received another payment for an order scheduled for the next day. Nancy said, My friend says they really enjoyed the food. That's why they've placed another order for tomorrow. They were both excited, and Nancy advised, This should be your full-time job. Forget about your office work. Zoe was hesitant, worried about small challenges like handling deliveries. Nancy reassured her, We need to find a permanent delivery person so you can focus solely on cooking. Zoe agreed. Later, Nancy visited Terrence, who turned out to be her cousin. Meanwhile, Zoe called Nancy, expressing her struggle to find a reliable delivery person. Nancy told her not to worry and that she'd be home soon. A while later, Nancy returned with Terrence. Terrence looked around and said, These apartments seem familiar. I once dropped off a client here. As they reached Zoe's door, Terrence hesitated to go in. Nancy pulled him inside. Zoe, come downstairs. I've brought a solution to your problem. Zoe came down and saw Terrence. What are you doing here? Why are you in my house? Didn't I tell you to leave me alone? Nancy stepped in. What do you mean? He's the taxi driver who made me lose my job. I've had a terrible day. Don't make it worse. Please, just leave. Calm down, Nancy said. Calm down? And how could you bring a stranger into my house? He's not a stranger. He's my cousin. Zoe's eyes widened in shock. What? Terrence frowned, ready to leave. Nancy stopped him. We talked about this. I can't work with someone who doesn't even want to see me. It wasn't intentional, Nancy. And I didn't know he was your cousin. After a long discussion, they convinced Zoe to accept Terrence as their delivery guy. Nancy made a proper introduction, and they shared an awkward hug. With that settled, the team started working together. They handled orders and made deliveries. Along the way, Zoe and Terrence had more conversations and got to know each other better. The next day, when Terrence arrived to pick up the orders, he found Zoe crying. Her food had gone bad. Terrence suggested a way to salvage the situation. Zoe followed his advice, and the client was satisfied. Zoe was relieved and grateful. A few days later, Terrence fell sick and couldn't work. Zoe brought him food at home. Terrence handed her his car key so she could make the deliveries herself. After completing the deliveries, Zoe returned the keys. They chatted for a long time, and Zoe realized Terrence hadn't eaten since she brought him food earlier. She went to the kitchen and cooked for him. During this time, Zoe and Terrence grew closer. Terrence then came up with an idea. They should start filming their daily activities, from cooking to delivering food. One day, while they were taking photos, Terrence grabbed a piece of meat and ran off with it. Zoe chased him. Terrence bit into the meat, and as they pulled at it, they both ended up taking a bite at the same time. They felt embarrassed, and Terrence quickly said, I only came to take pictures, and I've done that. As he left, he forgot his camera. Zoe followed him to return it. They both kept repeating their words awkwardly like fools. A few days later, Nancy returned with a gift for Terrence to thank him for helping Zoe. Thank you, and your bestie, Terrence said while smiling. Nancy gave him a knowing look. What's with that smile? You like Zoe, don't you? What are you talking about? Don't be shy, I can tell. Later, they visited Zoe, played games, and had fun together. The next day, Nancy told Terrence, If you love Zoe, tell her sooner rather than later. Don't waste time. It's true, I love her, but then start small. Buy her gifts. Send sweet messages. Or do I need to teach you? You're a man. Come on. Terrence took Nancy's advice. Meanwhile, Zoe heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, Alex came in, ready to apologize. He sat her down and poured his heart out. Eventually, Zoe forgave him. Later, Nancy and Terrence arrived. Zoe pulled Nancy aside. Nancy said, "Hold on, Terrence brought you a gift." "Oh wow, thank you so much. Let me show you." Terrence waited in the living room. After Zoe told Nancy what had happened, Nancy got upset. "You got back with your ex? Why?" Alex had even proposed with a ring. Nancy was completely against it. She wanted Terrence, her cousin, to be with Zoe. Nancy refused to support the engagement and left. When she got home, Terrence noticed something was off. After pressing her for an answer, Nancy finally said, "Zoe went back to her ex." Terrence was visibly shaken. Nancy added, "I know you genuinely love her, but you took too long. If you had acted sooner, you'd be together now." Business went on as usual. Zoe continued to appreciate Terrence for his help with deliveries. Then there was another knock on her door. Zoe went to open it. "Who's this?" "Oh, I haven't introduced you." "Terrence, this is my fiancé, Alex. Alex, this is Terrence, my friend." Terrence extended his hand. "Oh, you're the delivery guy?" Alex said dismissively, refusing to shake his hand. "Man, you do a great job." "Let me see what you brought today," Alex said, trying to touch the food. "Hey, don't touch that. You're stopping me from touching my own food? This isn't your food. It's for customers. If you're hungry, go to a restaurant." Zoe stepped in and asked Terrence to continue with his work. Alex said, "Nancy, talk to your driver. Now get me something to eat." One day, Alex told Zoe to quit her food business and go back to her old job. "I can find you a job, but my love, you know I love cooking." "Yes, I know, but cooking for me is enough. It's not a good look for someone with your education to be posting on Instagram selling food. Let me call someone to arrange an interview for you at my friend's company tomorrow." "What if they don't hire me?" "They will. It's my friend's company. But for now, just go to the kitchen and cook for me." The next morning, Terrence came to pick up the food for deliveries, but Zoe informed him that the business was closed. She had stopped cooking. "But you told me you love cooking. Last time you even said you dream of opening your own restaurant." "I don't want that anymore. Terrence, thank you so much for all your help. This is your boyfriend's decision, isn't it? If only you knew that guy doesn't love you." "What did you say?" "Zoe, your boyfriend doesn't love you. Alex doesn't love you. Look at my hand. If he doesn't love me, why is he marrying me? My relationship is none of your business. I understand that, but is this really your dream? There's nothing you can say to change my mind." Terrence sighed. "Are you truly at peace with this decision?" Zoe hesitated, then softly said, "Yes." "All right," Terrence said, and left. But deep down, Zoe wasn't at peace at all. When Terrence reached Nancy, he vented in frustration. "Talk to your friend. She's quitting her business. Why?" "I don't understand. Are you saying Zoe isn't selling food anymore? I just came from her place, and she told me there's nothing I can say to change her mind. Please talk to your friend. Talk to her." Then he left. Nancy called Zoe. Zoe explained, "Alex promised to get me my old job back, so I just decided to quit the food business." Nancy replied, "All right, I just hope you won't regret this later." She hung up. Zoe was getting more frustrated. A few days later, she went to see Terrence. "Leave me alone about my decisions. I can't just stand by and watch you give up on your dreams. You said yourself that you wanted to open your own restaurant. Have you forgotten?" "Terrence, I haven't given up on my dreams. My boyfriend has a lot of money. He can support anything I want to do." "Oh, so it's about money. Now I understand." Terrence walked away. When Zoe got home, she called Nancy, confused about why Terrence was completely ignoring her. Nancy told her, "Because he loves you." That night, Zoe told Alex that she wanted to take him home to meet her family. Alex was too busy on his phone and didn't take the matter seriously. Zoe got frustrated and snatched the phone from him. As she scrolled through his messages, she discovered he was chatting with Alice, who had been calling Zoe a doll. "So your girlfriend calls me a doll?" Zoe asked furiously. She kept scrolling and uncovered the truth. Alex was only marrying her to inherit his father's company. That was the condition his father had given him. He had to marry Zoe to get the company. Zoe threw Alex out and tossed the engagement ring at him. A few days later, Terrence showed up at Zoe's place with food and drinks. But Zoe had no appetite. She had cried too much and regretted everything that had happened. Terence took it upon himself to comfort her, holding her close in a warm embrace as she cried on his chest. They started cooking together again, and at the end of the day, Terence finally confessed, "I love you." Zoe smiled and replied, "I love you too." And just like that, they officially became a couple. Their food business continued, but this time it was run by lovers. And that was the end of the movie. Destination Heart. I'm Evans. And this is Nollywood Recapped. Please subscribe.